Hey, YouTube. This is kind of a serious topic. There's a lot of people that don't like to talk about this one either. Um, and so they're a little leery to even contact me about these problems, and that's okay. I understand that there's a lot of sometimes a shame mixed into the human condition, the things that we do as humans. Sometimes it's just not something you want to go public about, and totally understand that. And so, for those who have contacted me, I just wanted to kind of maybe comment in this video versus through an email. It's a little easier to do this. And so, it's about addictions. We've touched upon this really briefly in this channel, but addictions is a very, very heavy thing. Not just for prepping, because you don't want to have that as a distraction and to really kind of decrease your chances of survival. We would know that. That's common sense that having a serious addiction. We're not talking about just caffeine, which can be somewhat serious, but we're talking about like a major hard drug use kind of addiction. Those are really kind of the most scary because, I mean, if there was any type of real emergency that you had to weather and you couldn't get access to those drugs that you were addicted to, you're going to have a real major, major problem. I mean, a meltdown. It could, literally result in death. I mean, some withdrawals alone can be deadly. So this is a bad thing. So let's just take the equation out that there's going to be some type of emergency to weather. Let's just talk about just regular everyday life that you have an addiction. How are you going to deal with this? Now, if it's happened to you, then you need to realize that it is happening to you and not minimize what's going on. If it's happening to someone else, you need to get them some support. You can't always convince people that they need help. But maybe having them around other people that have gone through this and that can have come to the point that they have identified that they have a problem and that they have gone to and seek help and they have a support group, they're going to be able to help the other person become a little more aware of what's really going on with themselves. Sometimes it's really hard to be objective when it's going on with yourself and you can't always see how you're even acting because sometimes you'll just cover for yourself. You'll just pretend that everything's okay. So that's the big thing here. It's going to get basically get yourself or the other person in a support group. And the more that you can be held accountable for your actions, the better you can weather through this until you get to the point that you make up your mind that you are going to be determined to overcome it. Now, just like in prepping and survival, we talk about the will to live. That varies from person to person. Some people, when they're faced with great challenges, will just sit down and die. It's been shown many times. Some people have almost no will to live, no willpower so much. And there's other people that will face that danger head on, I mean, just face to face, and they'll do that for literally months and months, maybe even years. They've been shown that some people lost in the great, distant wilderness, I mean, the real remote wilderness, have survived for years under very harsh conditions that pretty much almost anybody would never even go that long. I mean, they wouldn't even weather it. And so you have some people that are extremely hardy. And what's so interesting there is a lot of those people that are very hardy and that could outlast most people are some people you probably wouldn't even really think that they would be able to do that. They might be the quieter people sometimes, not always, but it's the people that are not so that you wouldn't assume, It's just typically because it's more about the mindset, not the body per se. Because sometimes you look at people that are like in gyms and they're like, bench pressing 400 pounds. And you're like, man, I bet that person could survive in the wilderness like forever. No. It's usually some other people that are like more reserved and they have a very deep level of calm and patience and clarity. And they can take things logically step by step to work through problems. That bodybuilder may panic in the first week, perish because of making stupid mistakes or because his body is so big and built up. And he needs such a high level of calories, he may have a lot more problems than someone that isn't built like a freight train. So you have different dynamics here. And so when we come back though to addictions, an addiction though is a very difficult thing, especially if you don't have a lot from the beginning, the will to live or the means to identify the problem. So you have to have that will to overcome things. And so This is a problem that we don't see a lot of people in today's society that want to dig very deep, or they don't have a deep reservoir to dig into to begin with. So that's why having a network of people, just like in prepping, you'd want to have a community of preppers. Even though you may not live right next to a prepper, even if all you have is just neighbors that are friendly and that you get along, that's going to go a long way more than if you were just a lone person that never talked to anybody and has no one else to bounce ideas off, or no one to even go to, or no one to actually work together to solve problems. So if you have an addiction, you need to work with other people to solve these problems. This is inherently a very important aspect, because it's not only about identifying that you have the problem. It's about how to, make a plan. And typically making your own plan when you're already delusional in a sense of not being able to sometimes even identify the full range of your problem isn't going to be helpful to be by yourself. You need to be around others, especially those who have already been there, come through it, and they have a lot of strength and a lot of true history and experience is the word. That's the word I'm looking for. Experience of how to overcome. So it's just like if you're out in the wilderness and you were with a guide, maybe it's a wilderness guide or a trail guide, and they've been doing this for decades, and they know the land like the back of their hand. They know all the animals. They know all kinds of very advanced first aid and all kind of things. And if something ever happened, you would feel very safe if you're with that person, because they know probably 10 ways to deal with every situation, because either they've seen it or they've studied it to the point that they're very comfortable. And so it's the same thing with addictions. You want to be around people that have already come through the other side, so that it gives you hope, because well, if they're human and they had the same problem and they able to overcome it, then I can too, and that my life isn't over. So that's the big deal, and that's what you should focus on now. Now, later on in life, after you can get through the majority of that addiction, and when the actual addiction part, that fiending, the wanting of whatever it is you're addicted to, it will fade over time. But like they say in AA or NA, basically though, once you're an addict, you're always an addict. But sometimes they'll just call it a recovering addict. And so you don't always want to put a label per se like that, maybe, but I see what they're coming from. I see what they're saying, because they're saying basically you have to be mindful not to slide back to where you were, because if you went there once, you could go there twice and maybe more. So in that sense, that label is just there as a reminder that you'd always maintain your sobriety. And that could be for a lot of things. When we talk about addiction, it's not just hard drugs either, even though that's what I've been getting questions on. It's also about maybe you're a workaholic. Maybe you don't have any family life because all you want to do is get that overtime pay, and you don't put a priority on your family. Now that's a major problem. That's a major, major problem. But in society today, it's becoming a more rare problem because people don't want to work. So you got those kind of issues that whatever it is for you, it could be maybe something that you like to buy a lot of that's way beyond your budget. Maybe you just... maybe you're one of us in some sense, in maybe even a more imbalanced way, that you just have to have that new multi-tool that Swiss Army that put out, and you just don't have the $50, but you just have to have it, and you put it on your credit card, and the next month you get another multi-tool, even though you just don't need it, and you keep on doing that year after year, and you'll get yourself in major trouble over time. And so there's so many different types of addictions. And it can be very specific, but in the big picture, they're all the same in a sense, because an addiction is an imbalance. And so you make sure you have to get some help on this. Sometimes having the willpower to overcome it, in most cases, it's just there's not enough willpower to overcome it by yourself. You got to remember, we're just human. We're capable of great things, things that we typically don't even know our own potential. And we typically don't ever even go as far as we can really go. But with that being said, that we also have to be realistic, though. On some levels, though, we are vulnerable because of our nature, and we don't have the willpower to stay on the straight track forever. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we deviate, just sometimes because we get so complacent with things are going so well all the time, and then when sometimes something happens, we're like, crap. I just want to get back to that easy road, but you deviated and you had the consequences. And so if you deviated from your life and everything was going well, and now you have lots of problems because your buddy was doing some kind of hard drug, and you decided to test it out, and now you're hooked. There's a way to go back. If you can get into problems, you can reverse it. But that's up to you to figure that out. You're going to have to seek the help to figure out how to reverse that problem. Most things are reversible. I mean, even people who've smoked for many, many years, the science have shown that the lungs can heal the majority back, if not all the way back, if you catch it early enough. So just because you damage the body or the mind doesn't mean that you can't heal. And it may require a lot of time, a lot of nutrition, a lot of personal care, but it is possible. And even those people that can't fully reverse it, it's better to reverse some than to continue to go downhill and degrade. So I hope this gives you a little bit of hope, a little bit of direction. If you have further questions, feel free to contact me. As always, thanks for watching The Art of Prepping.